Hello, my name is Shanelle Gabriel. I'm a poet, singer, educator, and the interim executive director at Urban Word NYC, a youth arts organization in New York. I started writing poetry when I was fairly young. It kind of started out as just, the basic roses are red, violets are blue from there. But I always loved to tell stories, so I wrote short stories. It wasn't until I got maybe into high school that I started really, really enjoying, writing about the world around me, maybe writing about a crush I had, things like that. And then eventually I discovered like the whole world of poetry pretty late. By that time I was in college and I was like, wow, spoken word is this is beautiful. This is amazing. And once I jumped in, I got bit with the poetry bug and I kept performing anywhere that there was poetry is where I was. And that just led to a lot of awesome things. And I did it full time for about 8 years as an artist. I'm blessed to say that I'm inspired by my friends. A lot of the artists that I'm really big fans of are actually good friends of mine and people that are actually really accessible depending on your community, right? So for me, here in New York City, we are home to a lot of really, really talented, accomplished artists. So I'm inspired by Mahogany L. Brown. Inspired by Amir Suleiman, Aja Monet, a lot of different really, really great artists. Jason Reynolds, who, as I think most people know him as this wonderful novelist, but I know him, he started in poetry and spoken word. I'm also inspired by other forms of art. So I definitely follow the work of Banksy. If you don't know who that is, the whole premise of Banksy and the way he did art was really, really amazing. Inspiration doesn't only have to come from poetry to write poetry. And I think that that's something that I've really embodied. When I'm creating my art and my poetry, I always think about who I'm talking to. I start there. There are poems that are very much for me and they're in my diary, in my journal, and I don't, they're for me. Like that's the purpose of them. And then there are times where I know that what I'm creating, I'm being asked to bring something to the space. I try to write for the most part from a place of hope, a place of joy. I think that those are the main things that go into me thinking about creating something, and especially for an event such as this. I hope that listeners hear themselves. I think when I first started poetry writing and started performing, I remember being at the New York Poets Cafe, my first poetry slam ever. And at the time, I wrote a poem about something I was going through. And I didn't think anybody really wanted to, it was just me talking about my feelings. And, so many people came up to me and said I was feeling the same thing. And so a lot of times I think for me is I do want people to feel like they've connected with someone. To feel like the things that they're hearing in their head, are things that is being said, that they're being affirmed, as well as maybe just, feeling some joy, feeling, I do want people to feel the things that I'm trying to express within themselves, feel a little element of themselves on a stage, even if they're not the one saying it. I'm so excited and glad that Juneteenth has become the holiday that it has been. It's felt like something that was very secluded, isolated in the Black community, and even in a subset, a smaller group of people from the Black community, and to see that everybody's actually now seeing the importance of the Black Independence Day in a sense. For many, for the people that were enslaved, that was the time that they were free. I think back to Frederick Douglass's speech, "What to a slave is the 4th of July." A lot of times we think of July 4th as the Independence Day for America, but there was a whole population of people that were not free. The Emancipation Proclamation freed the people that were enslaved. However, 2 years later is when Texas, found out, the slaves in Texas, the people that were enslaved in Texas found out. And we think about that, or we can focus on the fact that for 2 years, people still did not get their freedom. Like some were, but everyone wasn't. And I see so much symbolism in that. Juneteenth is such a symbolic holiday. What feels powerful about Juneteenth is that it was not the end. And we were looking for it, just freeing slaves. And it was a beautiful moment. And there was joy in the moment. It was a celebration. People were like instantly like getting together, like, okay, we got to start school. We have to go. I got to find my family members that were sold away from me. We have to figure out how we can get in office. Like these are all the things that happened literally on Juneteenth. These are the conversations. And it wasn't like we're free, let's just hang out. It was like we're free, let's build. So I think for me, there's so much reality in Juneteenth that even though we get these moments that feel like, wow, we've made a new step in the right direction, there's always more work to be done, unfortunately. And the reality is that we're prepared for it. Like they didn't say, hey, I don't know if I can start a school. They were like, we're gonna figure it out. And so there's so much power in the holiday itself and what it symbolized to all of those people that now had this newfound freedom. And just knowing that didn't mean we relaxed. That meant we make this, we're gonna figure it out, and we're gonna make sure that we, surpass anything that anyone had ever imagined for ourselves. Emancipation is a way to say somebody else has given you your freedom. I think the thing about this to me is that it wasn't given. It was a fight, and it was a fight. And a lot of times we look at it like this one date happened and everything just stopped. And that's just not how the world works. And that's not how freedom works. And so I look at emancipation as someone giving me the right to the thing that I've been fighting for. It's hard balancing the joy and the struggle within a holiday such as Juneteenth, because there is always the reality of, there's the moment of like, wow, we got this, and then there's the reality of, wait, I still got to pick up my tools and work. Like I still have to still be. I think we're going to kind of keep going with the building theme, but for me, it's like you have to acknowledge both. There's gratitude even amidst turmoil. There's joy even amidst pain. There's like, well, there's the death of one institution, even though it gave rise to another, but at least this institution doesn't look exactly like the other. Those small things and those levels of progress, those chip away at something. I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. Like they back then in that moment on that day could not have imagined me right now speaking on this little device and being able to say the things that I can say, and having that freedom to be able to be in the spaces I've been in and having these platforms. So, I have to balance this idea of, acknowledging the progress, acknowledging the growth, acknowledging the change, while still simultaneously knowing that this is not over. And that's a hard balance, but you have to have both. When working with young people, I believe in very much championing their voices, letting them know that their words matter, in a world that doesn't always listen to our young people and doesn't think that they really know what they're talking about. I'm always blown away with how much they know more than me, more than I do sometimes. And And so when I'm working with young people, it's very much just a affirmation, the same concept of like just affirming, like you know, what does liberation of your pen look like? What does that look like for you to say what's on your heart and what's in your mind? What do you see in the world? And have you thought about? Has anyone asked you what your thoughts are about what's going on in the world? Like those are the things that I'm hoping to get young people to see when they're writing is just, you know, or also just what does it mean to just say, you know, to paint a picture verbally, you know, to explore words and language. So sometimes it doesn't have to be as heavy as the deepest feelings in their heart. What does it mean to just say, hey, I'm just going to write about this moment or this cool thing or this experience, just because my words and my experiences do matter? That's very much what I push for in my workshops with young people. All right, so now if you would like to respond to a prompt, to just kind of think of a creative way to respond to this holiday Juneteenth, I hope you can get a pen, piece of paper, something to write with, and I'm gonna lead you through a little mini workshop so we can create something really cool together. Is that cool? All right, so go on, I'll give you a second, go and grab your pen and paper and let's get it going. All right. So we're thinking about Juneteenth. Now, this is a holiday and it's a celebration. It's a celebratory holiday, right? And there's a lot of words in there, but what we're going to do is kind of create a little box, a little toolkit for our poem that we're going to write in a second. So just really quickly, whatever comes to your mind, don't overthink it. I'm going to ask you 3 different questions and you're just going to kind of write whatever comes to mind. And this is going to be our toolkit that we're going to be able to pull from and create a poem in a second, okay? What images come to mind when you think of a celebration? I can give you an example. Maybe you think of food. Well, what's the kind of food that you think about? Or maybe what's the kind of food that other people do, you know? So think about what comes to mind when you think of a celebration. I'll give you a couple of seconds to pause and think about it. So now we're going to go back. We're going to go back and try to think, what would it be like to have been there, to hear this great news from 2,000 soldiers coming into your town, letting you know that, hey, you are no longer enslaved. What do you think they felt? Let's go through some feelings. What did that place, what did that moment sound like? What might you have seen? What might you have heard? What might you have smelled? Maybe they were cooking too, right? What do you think? So we're going to write in response. What do you think? Paint a picture for me in that moment of when they heard that they were free. We're going to take a quick pause. Feel free to pause it right here while you take some time to write. All right. Last but not least, here's the final prompt. What does freedom look like today? What would you, what does freedom look like today? Now I'll give an example of this because I know that's kind of like a wow, it could look like anything. But freedom, like freedom for me is everyone being able to sit in a room together holding hands. Freedom to me today is people feeling safer in their communities. What does freedom look like to you today? I'm gonna take a time, take a pause, press pause, and take some time to write. All right, all right. So we have a whole bunch of things, a whole bunch of images, thoughts, ideas right in this box that you just kind of pre-wrote. Now we're gonna craft our poem. So you have it. You have technically you have the poem, but we're gonna try to like really be creative and pull this out. So we're gonna do what's called a repetitive list poem or a NAFRA. The idea is that we're going to use the words freedom, and every other line is going to have to start with freedom is, okay? So the first line is freedom is, and I can say freedom is people holding hands in a room together. I can say freedom is food being cooked by everyone, celebrating. Freedom is shouting and cheering. You see, you have all of those images. We're going to pull those all down here, and that's going to be our poem. So take some time to write freedom is. Write what freedom is to you based on the things you created already. Excellent, excellent. You just wrote a whole poem. That's literally it. You did it. You did it. So hopefully you take some time to share maybe with people around you, maybe with your family, maybe with a classmate. Maybe, you just write it in your notebook and read it in the mirror. Maybe you record it and put it somewhere and share it with someone else. So, but I just want to say thank you so much for staying around, sticking with this, and really trying to be creative and using that creativity that I know exists within you.